I would love to give our audience just they want to invest in commercial real estate. They hear that's a good thing. So they've got some money. They're saying, I want to invest in it. Let's talk like step by step how to do that. First step, do I find a broker? Do I find a deal? Do I go off market, on market? Like, what do I do to find a deal? Is that the first step even?
Finding a deal is definitely not the first step.
Okay,
so I would say learn.
Okay.
First step is education.
Okay.
Right. I hear from people, real estate investors all the time, like, I just don't know where to get started in real estate. I was like, well, yeah, or in commercial real estate. But when you first got started in real estate, you didn't either.
Yeah.
You listened to Bigger Pockets.
Yeah.
You listened to Brandon Turner for 1,000 episodes, right?
So sorry.
Yeah. So, it's the same thing, right? You
Yeah.
just got to get out there, listen to the podcast, watch the YouTube videos, read the books, go to some commercial real estate events, right? And just meet people in the industry. It's the same as in residential, right? You kind of got to go back to that step one. From there, you'll build the contacts.
Yeah.
And then it depends on what kind of real estate investing that you want to do. If you've got a lot of money, then you probably want to, but you don't have a lot of time, you probably want to take the single tenant or triple net lease route, right?
Okay, explain that.
So a triple net lease is a lease structure within commercial real estate. There's a bunch of different ones where the tenants are responsible for their pro rata share of the common area maintenance, the property taxes, and the building insurance. So, in multifamily or residential, you as the landlord are actually responsible for all of those.
Yeah.
If your property taxes or insurance goes up, like your buddy's shopping center in Florida is probably got some insane insurance right now.
Yep.
If that goes up, you as the landlord in residential or multifamily, that comes out of your profit.
Yeah.
Whereas in commercial, that expense gets passed on pro rata to my tenants. Sorry guys, taxes went up this year. If y'all want to appeal it, you can, but it's pretty cut and dry.
What's the risk of triple net lease properties? Like you go buy a single tenant triple net lease, let's say. What's the risk there? And two, it sounds almost too good to be true. So what's the downside?
Yeah. So the risk is you're not just buying the real estate, you're buying the lease.
Okay.
And the tenant is the one guaranteeing the lease. So you have to really dive into and make sure that you understand that tenant's credit, their viability as a business, what they're doing. That's why like Walgreens and Starbucks are such popular, single tenant net lease investments, because everybody knows Starbucks and Walgreens are doing fine.
Yeah.
For the most part. And they also buy really good locations, or they lease in really good locations.
Yep.
So even if Starbucks or Walgreens moves out, chances are good you're going to find a great tenant that wants to move in there. So the other risk you have is it's a single tenant.
Yeah.
Right? If they disappear, 100% of your rent is gone. But that's where it comes down to due diligence and making sure that you're doing the right thing on the front end. We've got a lot of clients that have done some very successful single tenant net lease deals, but it's a lot of front end work.
Yeah.
And then from there, you as the landlord don't really have any responsibility. It's making sure that the check's coming every month. And I would say also getting out there and checking on the property once or twice a year, making sure that the tenants are doing some of the work that they need to be doing. Because a single tenant net lease is often structured a little bit differently from a triple net lease where there's only one tenant. So they are solely responsible for actually doing all of the work on the property. And, you might be thinking, why would a tenant want to do that?
Yep.
Well, Starbucks has a very specific brand and a brand image that they have to maintain. They're not going to deal with 10,000 landlords who have 10,000 different opinions on how, landscaping should be done. They know this is how we like to do landscaping, so we're going to take care of it. So, and there's many brands that feel the exact same way. Triple net is typically you'll have 2 or 3 tenants, and so you won't be able to just pass everything off to one. And they actually tend to like the triple net structure as well. You do have to educate tenants on this more often than not if you're dealing with mom and pops, which can be frustrating because they don't get it. They're like, well, hold on, I'm paying $25 in rent, but now I'm having to pay $5 more in rent. And it's like, well, yeah, you would be paying $30 in rent if this was a full service lease. And in fact, I'd probably be charging you $32 or $35 a foot if it was full service, just to take into the account the risk. But since I'm being very transparent with you about what the costs are to run the property, I'm just going to charge you a base rent. And so your base rent will go up every year. But this, your triple net expenses, that will go up as it comes.
Yeah, that's smart. Do you need a property manager with triple net lease then? If you're just having a triple net, why would I need a property manager, or would I?
Yeah, so it depends on the property, right? Okay. And I know everybody loves that answer in real estate. It's like, it depends. Everything depends. It really does depend on the property. So like with a single tenant net lease, probably not unless you have 10 or 20 of them. And at which point you might want to look at getting an asset manager, right? Which is kind of the same thing. So they're not necessarily going to have to manage the properties, but you do want somebody that's handling tenant relations, that is making sure rent's being paid on time, that property taxes and insurance and all of that are getting paid properly. It does become, a burden at some point. But on a triple net lease though, you're probably going to want a property manager, right? Because you are still, even though the tenants are paying for their pro rata share of everything, you as the landlord are actually still responsible for executing on that.
Okay.
So if you have a landscaper or if you have, a maintenance crew that has to go out and change light bulbs in the parking lot, you still have to deal with all of that. So you want to make sure it's being done properly with a property manager.
Okay, that makes sense. What do loans look like on a thing like on a property like this? Like, how's financing work? Very
different from multifamily.
Okay.
Multifamily is so easy to finance compared to pretty much anything else. So commercial, really before, I guess, September of 22, you were looking at 20 to 25% down.
Okay.
And then, interest rates were kind of in that 4.5% to 5.5% range. Now you're probably looking at 30 to 40% down. And your interest rates are somewhere between 7 and 8%, give or take, depending on your credibility, depending on your financials.
Yeah.
And sometimes you can get them to where you don't have to personally guarantee it, right? Everybody wants to stay away from the PG. That's why multifamily is nice. You don't have to do any of that stuff.
Yeah.
But more often than not, you're probably going to be signing a personal guarantee. So as long as you can get comfortable with the tenants, we don't really mind it. It's just part of it. And if you're doing a multi-tenant situation, the chances of you ever getting into a bind where majority of your tenants aren't paying rent, it's just not going to happen.
All right, so let's go back to, I want to buy a property. So I've educated myself. I know what I want to buy. I want to buy a small strip mall, I don't know, whatever, 10 to 20 tenants, some kind of nice anchor tenant in there. Now do I go find a broker? Can I do this off market? Should I pursue both things?
Yeah, you could do both.
Okay.
So, hopefully in your time of learning, you might have gone to some real estate events. You could have made a couple of contacts, met some people, and you could even find a potential partner there.
Yeah.
The way that I did my first deal, I didn't have any money. I didn't have hardly any experience other than my sweat equity, right? So I learned exactly what this developer wanted. I went out and found it and pitched it to him. And I said, hey, I've got this piece of land. We can build 57 townhomes on it. Let's do a deal. And they said, okay, that's a pretty good deal for what I think we got the land for like $1 million. It's nothing for 57 units. And they gave me 10% for finding the deal. But then I had to continue working on it. So I actually got the project management experience as well. So I really got to learn everything about the development side of things. I only got 10%. And a lot of people would look at that and go, oh, 10%? I wouldn't do that for 10%. Yeah. But I got 2 years of real estate development experience. I got to work on a 42-unit townhome. That is 100% of the reason why I am where I am today.
100%.
Because I got all of the education.
Yep.
So, I get pitched all the time like, hey, I want to partner with you on this. I don't have any money, but I want 50%. I'm not going to do that.
Yep.
It's just not going to happen. 10 to 20%, probably, depending on how good of a deal it is. So you could find a partner that way. But talk to brokers. Talk to every broker that you can. Build a relationship with them. Commercial real estate is very finicky, right? A lot of these commercial real estate brokers, they're not like your residential agents that you're used to dealing with. They will blow you off or they will never return your phone calls. They need to know that you're a really serious buyer. So, typically what I recommend is go out, meet them face to face, buy them lunch, right? Then follow up with them every 3 weeks from then on out. Whether that's a text message, an email, a phone call, another in-person meeting, doesn't matter. Stay top of mind because I promise you their other clients are not doing that. Yeah. And come up with a very specific buy box. Don't just go to them and say, hey, I want to buy a shopping center. Kind of like what you said earlier. Yeah. I want to buy a 10 to 20 unit shopping center that's between $2 and $4 million within a 50-mile radius of here, and call me, right? Because as a broker, I'm dealing with a lot of people calling me all the time, like, hey, I want to buy this, I want to buy this. And I'm trying to figure out who is legit and who's not. Yeah. The person that comes to me and says, this is exactly what I want, I know, okay, they probably know what they're doing. And the thing is, somebody could come to me and say, I want to buy anything between 2 and 4 million. And then they could come to me and say, I want to buy 10 to 20 units between 2 and 4 million, et cetera, et cetera. If I get a $3 million shopping center, I'm calling the person that told me exactly what they wanted. I'm not calling the person that just said, I'll buy anything between 2 and 4 million.
Yeah.
So building a relationship with them is very important. It's just a kind of a different game.
Yeah. Solid point, man. All right. So once you buy that property, once you start shopping for a property, is it pretty similar to residential where you go look at it, you make an offer, you analyze the deal, run the numbers? Are we back to kind of normal real estate at that point?
Yeah, it's pretty similar. I mean, the buying process is very similar. It's just a little more intensive.
Yeah.
Right. So I mean, once you go out and tour the space, there's a lot of things that you won't see when you're there. Right. I mean, it's a shopping center or an office building or industrial, whatever. A lot of it's going to come down to the lease, right? Every lease is different. There are no leases that are the same because every landlord has a different opinion on how their leases should be structured. And then every property is different, right? So the 3-tenant strip center next door is going to have a very different, lease structure than the 4-tenant strip center next door. Yeah. So it's very important for you to dive into that. Make sure you've got a commercial real estate attorney, not an attorney, a commercial real estate attorney. Make sure that you've got a really good broker that knows what they're doing. I would already be talking to banks before you're even going out and seeing properties.
Did you get pre-approved? Is that a thing like it is in residential?
Yes and no. It's not the same as in residential where you get like a pre-approval letter and everybody feels good about it. It's more of you want to start building a relationship with bankers just the same way you are with brokers.
Okay, yeah.
So that by the time that the purchase comes around, that banker who you are submitting all the documents to knows enough about you. They've got a good enough relationship to where they can go into their committee, right? Because it's very different than residential real estate. Yeah. These commercial real estate brokers go into a board meeting and they are pitching you and your deal to a group of people who have never met you before. So you want to make sure you've got a really good lender or banker and that you've got a really good relationship with them and that they know you and your story.
Yeah. Smart, man.
So make it easy on them.
All right. I love it. Then you close the deal. You maybe have a private property manager and you start making money. How much money can you make from a commercial deal? I mean, is this...
How much money do you want to make?
I mean, so in residential, we look at like, hey, I'm obviously this changes all the time. Interest rates are making things really hard right now, but I always shoot for somewhere around like 5 to 10%, maybe 12% cash on cash return on a really, really, really good deal today. I mean, back in the day, it was, 15 to 20% cash on cash, but we've gotten a lot harder. But like, is that we're looking similar? Like, high single digit cash on cash, maybe, 50, I don't know. Like, what are we seeing?
It certainly can be. It can often be higher.
Okay.
Depending on which strategy you're utilizing. So the great thing about commercial real estate, cap rates are very easy to understand.
Yeah.
A cap rate is basically the cash on cash percentage return that you would get if you paid all cash for that deal. So if it's a 5% cap rate, if you paid all cash for that deal, you're going to get a 5% cash on cash return.
I'm glad you explained it that way because a lot of people explain it in a much more complicated way. And I'm like, why don't we just call it that? Because that's what it is.
It's very easy to understand.
Yeah. People make it way more complicated than that.
Yeah. I mean, there's a couple of little nuances like, closing costs.
Yeah, and CapEx maybe.
Whatever. Yeah. But I mean, that's basically what it is, right? And so, I mean, you'll see a Dollar General. 5% cap rate, right? That's all on the low end. But that's a stabilized deal. It's probably a 15-year lease. You don't have to do anything. It's mailbox money, right? And so, it's probably not going to be better than the stock market, but you also get the depreciation. You get the value of the real estate. There's some additional benefits to it. Then you have more of your value add real estate, right? And when we syndicate deals, we're typically aiming for an 18 to 22% internal rate of return.
Okay,
which gets very complicated. We probably won't be able to explain that on the podcast. But basically what that ends up being over a 5-year period is a 20% annualized cash on cash return. So you're not going to get 20% cash year one. You're not going to get it year 2. But by the time that we sell it and you divide that out over the 5-year investment period, you will have basically made 20% on your money every year. So that's what we aim for on the value add side. And then on development, it's riskier. So you've got to push it even higher. You've got to be getting 25% plus IRRs.
All right. Yeah, that's pretty similar to what we do on the, again, I do commercial real estate too. So on the mobile home park side, self-storage, we're doing the same kind of stuff. And it's hard to find those. It's not like those are everywhere, right? We submit 100 offers for every one we probably actually get.
They're tough.
Yeah, they're tough. And it's a tough time right now. Have you found much luck yourself or with clients going off market, like sending direct mail letters? Is that a thing that still works?
I love going off market.
Okay.
I mean, all of the things that people do in residential real estate also work in commercial, but no one does them.
Yeah.
You think about how many homeowners get like the
letters.
we'll buy your home, we'll buy your home, whatever. No one gets that in commercial real estate.
Yeah.
So if you're going to be the one person in your market that says, okay, I do know that I want to buy any office building between 10 and 20,000 square feet in these 5 zip codes, you can go to your local tax records, pull every building in that market that fits that, and start hitting them with mailers.
Yeah.
It's tough to cold call because often they're in LLCs that might go to an attorney and you just can't figure that out.
Yeah.
But the mailing address goes to exactly who that letter needs to go to.
Yeah.
So I love sending letters. I bought a little retail building down the street from here, like actually really around the corner, because of a letter that we sent during COVID.
That's cool.
And we got a great deal on it. I bought it for $435 and it appraised for $650.
Yeah.
I love doing off-market deals.
That's super cool.
Yeah.
I love it, man.